I'm going to start the March 17th, 2025 meeting of the Arlington Finance Committee. I'm going to start off with a presentation by the Water Bodies Working Group. I'd like to start off by asking them to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to turn it over to you and Carolyn to do the presentation. And then as we progress, we'll stop at certain points for questions and keep going that way. All right, so introductions.
Evening, everybody. I'm David Morgan, environmental planner and conservation agent for the town of Arlington, and I staff the Conservation Commission with it, the Water Bodies Working Group.
David White, Conservation Commissioner, also sort of an organized working group. I also involved in those of our other places as well.
Susan Chapnick, I'm Vice Chair of the Conservation Commission.
Ellen Reed, I'm from Friends of Menominee Rocks Park and I'm representing Hills Pond.
Brad Barber, and I'm co-chair of the Spy Pond Committee.
I'm Beth Catterat, and I'm a member of the Spy Pond Committee.
Welcome. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Carolyn.
Yep, so we're gonna run quickly through this presentation. I know there's a lot of slides, but I wanted us to all be on the same page, and we can use this presentation going forward as just a foundation so that people can review it in the future. So the Water Bodies Working Group is part of the working group within the Conservation Commission. And the Conservation Commission has a large scope, and the second slide simply shows you all of the responsibility of that particular group, which is why the Water Bodies Working Group was formed, to try to take some of that responsibility and concentrate it with a group of volunteers who can focus their attention. The other issue is that DPW was having a hard time managing some of that as well. And so by, again, creating a volunteer group, you allow more concentrated focus on the area at hand. We collaborate with, next slide. We collaborate with a number of groups in town, the Conservation Commission, the David Morgan, the environmental planner, DPW, Parks and Recs, professional contractors, a huge number of volunteers, and a huge number of both staff and volunteers at the Mystic River watershed. This is the current, next slide. Back to. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you're missing, that's interesting.
This one?
Yes.
One ahead.
Oh, it's one ahead. Did I miss one? Oh, they're in a different order. Okay, so this is the reps from the pond committees. Sorry, I must have moved it around again. You can see who is on both the water bodies and the various groups that they represent. At the moment, we don't have any volunteer representatives for the McClellan, the retention ponds, or Reed's Brook. There is a small group for Friends of McClellan that I recently joined, and they focus mostly on community activities. The other group that's active at McClellan and Reed's Brook is the Arlington, its initials are ARMI, so the Arlington Mass Invasive Plants Group. And so they are involved in removing invasive plants around town that are primarily at shorelines or along other paths in town, active paths in town.
Putting natives in too.
And they also put in native plants, so native perennials, to fill out spaces where we have invasives. What do you got next? So there's a lot going on this slide. And on this slide, what I'd like you to focus on is the table at the bottom. Anything that is in yellow and bold is high priority for water bodies and working group. Anything that's in blue costs too much money for an operating budget to cover for the most part. And so those brooks are covered primarily by external funds, CPA budget, or other grants that we can find. and they are a medium to low priority currently for the Water Bodies Working Group, okay? The other ones, the ones that aren't highlighted at all, are either on private land, like Herbert Meyer Brook. The Coolidge Brook is, I'm really familiar with it because I grew up in that neighborhood, is something the ACC has had to deal with for over a decade now, and it's quite a headache. But it looks like they may have that under control. There are a number of people who'd like to build on that wetland, and I think we've got that resolved. Clematis Brook is something we may want to deal with at some point because it's a little teeny brook and watershed area over by Poets Corner. It was ignored because of all of the potential development that was gonna happen there. And then the Mystic Lakes are covered by the Mystic River watershed. We got next. I'll go to the next one. So these are the management goals. They're the same management goals we've had for a while. By killing invasives at the appropriate time, particularly the aquatic invasives, before they seed, we reduce the chance of seeds establishing themselves. Many of those seeds can sit in the sediment for anywhere from 7 to 15 years before they germinate. The other thing it does is the smaller the plant, the less decaying of the plant, and so therefore the less phosphorus that builds up in the water and in the sediment, all of which impact the chance of us having an algae bloom, among other things. It also reduces the oxygen, which then decreases the chance of fish that people like to fish can survive. So these are the pictures of the predominant invasives that we have in town. And one picture shows the plant itself, and the other picture shows what the pond would look like if those plants existed. We do have Asian clams in Spy Pond. They're not as notorious as a mollusk. I'm not finding the note. The zebra mussels, and the muskrats like to eat them. And there's a muskrat family that has a huge pile of the shells and the sediment next to their home. So they are getting managed to some degree by the muskrats, and muskrats are our friends. They're not the same as other rats. So how do we monitor and treat? We monitor and treat by having using very specific chemicals for very specific plants, and we do them at very specific times so that we get the plant before it goes to seed. And as you saw earlier, there are different plants, so we do that at different times of the spring and summer. Those plants, we usually do our treatment the same day we do our monitoring, which cuts costs and is more effective. And you guys can answer more on that. Let's see. So these are just some of the techniques that we use, and I can't comment on the H2O analysis. I'll let them answer that. But it's basically very similar analysis across most of the ponds. Next slide. Here are all the volunteer organizations that are engaged in helping manage the water bodies in town. And anything that has a town logo next to it is a town committee. Anything that, and the orange is just because there are two other groups within Spy Pond. Anything that doesn't have the town is a private group. And for the most part, they're not getting money and we're not giving them money. However, there are a few occasions where that changes. And there's thousands of dollars that we save by having all of these volunteers. Okay, we're on McClellan Park. So some history around McClellan. McClellan is a landfill. The landfill was capped, but it was never lined. It collects a fair amount of water because it comes off of the hill behind it, which includes 2 vertical streets and 2 or 3 parallel streets. It's also next to the Whipple Hill Conservation, which has a significant amount of water in it. There's a pond up at the top in Winchester. There appears to be a fair amount of streams throughout it. There is a brook, Whipple Hill Brook through it with a lot of wetlands at various levels. Our detention ponds drain into a drainage pipe, and then there's a culvert under Reed Street, which travels about 3 or 4 houses. I was just there Saturday trying to figure this out with a friend while we walked around. And then it diverts into the lowest Whipple Hill water bodies. It is clear from the detention pond through the pipe. However, if you go to the sewer drainage, the stormwater drainage at the other point, at the exit point, it's not draining at the moment. There's nothing happening and it's backed up. And there's no water going. The water from the street into Whipple Hill Marsh is just flat, and it has the iron
Iron flocculation.
in it, as well as the detention pond. Let's see, I did that. Oh, the upstream wetlands are Edward Drive, James Street, Skyline Drive, Philemon Street, and Thesda Street. What's going on here? I'll actually go back one. I just want to see the pond. So this tells you when the pond was constructed. From FY16 through FY19, we did a series of significant studies. And they found that there is iron flocculation, which wasn't harming. However, in the sediment, and that's what SDMNT is, they found arsenic, lead, and zinc. The source was unknown. In FY20, the Conservation Commission, Parks and Rec, DPW, created a vegetative buffer zone. It stayed and was maintained in 21, but then they accidentally mowed it. And so they've been reestablishing it since then. And that's the Army group that has been doing that. Okay, now the next slide. And more recently, we're doing a water flow. So David, did we do a water flow analysis and clear out some branches at some point?
2 separate things. We
Okay.
found obstructions, DPW found obstructions in the culvert underneath Reed Street rather. Cleared those out. Pond started functioning again, miraculously. And the water flow analysis is something that we're contracting for currently. There's an open bid for a surveyor to do that
That's
analysis.
a CPA
CPA
grant.
fund.
Yeah, that's a CPA grant of $40,000. It's a pond survey. And they'll be doing that sort of this spring, summer, and fall?
Yep.
Okay. So DPW did clear out, was the one that cleared out that area. Okay. And it looks like it might need some more clearing out, given what we saw. So the volunteer groups will continue their work.
Okay, let's stop.
Okay, then we're gonna stop.
Okay, so you are looking for an appropriation at $85,000, is that correct?
Total.
All right, and so I see only $1,000 is being asked, or no money is being applied. How do I read this budget?
So there's
How much are you
there's
asking for
500.
McLennan?
We're gonna ask for 1,000, and there's 500 set aside in the current budget for signage to prevent the
No mow zone.
DPW from mowing. So it will be a no-mow zone signage, and we're starting to put that at all of the shorelines where we don't want DPW mowing. The other way is to encourage public from not walking into the area.
Okay, so CPA was, CPA allocated $40,000
For a study.
and that was in the FY25 budget.
Right,
And I'm hearing that no study has been done yet.
correct.
Do you know why?
Start this spring.
David?
Yep, starts this spring.
Why is it starting this spring and not in FY?
Last summer or
25.
fall.
Yeah, why not last
This
summer and
is-
fall?
We're continuing, yeah.
Aren't we still in FY25?
We're still in FY25, we still.
Yeah.
Until the end of June.
So it's
So
been bid currently.
how long of a study is this gonna take? How long will the study take?
They need to do a bathymetric survey, so that's the bottom of the ponds. And that will tell us in a couple of days what sedimentation has built up over the years since the thing was constructed. And then the analysis that follows is, just figuring out how much sedimentation builds up over X amount of time. So it's a very short, simple survey. It should be done by the end of the fiscal year.
Why wasn't it done sooner?
The reason in particular, it's just capacity.
So, and the flooding, which continues to exist, what's being done with that?
So
Anyone?
DPW needs to manage the outfall. There are two outflows underneath Reed Street. There's one at the bottom of the pond, which extends into the bottom. So that sedimentation that I mentioned will come in and cover up that drain, so to speak. So the top one is the one that functions, and that is what prevents the flooding. And so it's the overflow, and that goes through the culvert out to the other side of Reed Street.
So why shouldn't we take $85,000 and use it exclusively to stop the flooding that's happening now, because the neighbors have been complaining for years?
We don't know yet what the conditions are that we would address. That's what the intention of the survey is, to find out what we're working with, what's changed since the thing has been built.
So you're saying there's actually two pipes? I saw the one
It's 2 outlets.
that, that is, the majority of the pipe is showing. And then, but there's another pipe underneath that's covered in sediment, which is, okay. And what I'm hearing you say is that second pipe fills above that point.
What I'm saying is that it's flooding. It's
Yeah.
flooding right now. If you go today, the trees are back in the water. The
Right.
berm is covered. That has not been remediated at all. That still exists and it's been a problem.
Mhm.
We've known it's been a problem for a couple of years. Why, and if it's dependent on a survey that we have already appropriated funds for, and it's a quick survey, I don't understand why it hasn't been done and why you're asking for $85,000 for other projects.
Well, to be clear, the survey is a planning department survey, not water bodies working group. The outflows from McLennan are maintained by DPW. Water bodies working group doesn't actually have much to do at McLennan other than maintain the perimeter for the no-mow zone and the health of the water body.
So this is an example of a water body being managed by 3 different groups. Or
Not being
in this
managed at
case,
all by
2,
anybody.
right, 2 different groups are assigned to it and nothing's happened.
And so what does the finance committee need to do to get someone to take responsibility for this?
Did DPW find a leak last year and fix it?
So DPW found railroad ties that were stuck into the outflows last year and removed those. That was causing the damming, which I can't imagine had come from upstream. Somebody must have stuck those in there at some point. Lord knows.
Drop them in, yeah.
Dropped them in the pond and then
Yeah,
they ended up draining into
they're in the outflows. So, there's some degree of, wild card activity like that you could throw as much money as you like at it, and you can't stop people dropping railroad ties
You're not
into the.
suggesting that someone in the middle of the night 2 years ago dropped railroad ties in it, right?
I am. I think that there's every likelihood that there was some either vandalism or prank or somebody was dumping them or what have you, but
But the
that
big,
was the issue.
the issue causing, because I did see those trees still we did see the trees still in the water. So, and that is caused by the fact that the sediment has gotten so high since 2016 that it doesn't allow that lower drain to flow. Because if that lower drain were open, those trees would be more likely to be above ground, above the water.
I thought the lower drain was working last summer. Water level was lower last summer.
No, it wasn't.
Water department will periodically go out and do what's called blowing out the line, which means that they will push water and or air through from the other side, and then that jets the sediment out away from the lower pipe, it comes back. It's a moving body of water with soft sediment at the bottom, and I mean, honestly, a matter of days and it'll be covered again.
Oh,
Okay, other questions? Charlie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last year, the Water Bodies Working Group, as I recall, was asking something like $125,000. Or let me say it was more than $100,000, I don't remember exactly what it was. And there was considerable discussion about, and the Finance Committee generally had a sentiment to stay at the $50,000 that the prior year allocation was set at. And there was a fair amount of discussion about the reservoir and the water chestnut farming or elimination or whatever we do there. And the discussion included, whether we should buy a boat and get rid of them, or whether we have people walk out there and do it by hand, there's a whole bunch of different approaches, including the frequency of how many times we clean the reservoir. And this discussion ensued in the shade of the recent investment that the town made in improving the reservoir. So I think there was some concern about what we were doing to make the reservoir usable by the citizens in their new, we call reservoir infrastructure. So I'm curious as to what the $27,500 got us. I mean, it seems to me that we increased the budget. Or let's put it, I don't want to say we increased it. We supported a higher budget last year.
Charlie, can you hold your question when we get to the res? I just want to have questions on Reedsbrook and then we'll move to the res.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said, were there any other questions? So
No, just on Reedsbrook. Chuck, do you have a question on Reedsbrook?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to follow up on something you said, which is, it's great we have all these different organizations volunteering, and thank you for the time you spend. But who from the town is accountable for solving this problem? To Christine's point earlier, I think we've got money spent on surveys. That doesn't sound like it's gonna fix the problem unless the survey is required as a prerequisite to the problem. So I'm not following all the details, but who ultimately needs to solve the problem at hand? Is it planning department? Is it DPW? Get your perspective, David.
It's different problems too.
I should back all the way up and start at square one, because the genesis of the survey was that we knew that this was an active problem, all parties in town. And we were working to remedy it and knew that it would simply recur if we didn't do something different. So I went back to the archives and tried to pull out the blueprints from when the McLennan detention ponds were built. And as part of that documentation, I found that there was a Conservation Commission permit requiring 3 years of monitoring of sedimentation rates when the thing was built. And that was assigned to the planning department at the time. I can't find any record that those years were conducted, those monitoring years were conducted. And so, being in the planning department as the environmental planner, I took it on myself to seek CPA funds in order to conduct that study and find the difference between then and now. And it doesn't include monitoring, but it does include the analysis of what's changed and what we would need to do in order to get back to baseline conditions. So ultimately, I've assumed that responsibility. I don't know that it is necessarily mine per se, but it was initially given to the planning department by the Conservation Commission. The DPW water crews, they're responsible for that outflow. They're the ones that need to come along and clean it out, take the timber out, take the sticks, the leaves, the sediment, what have you. We call DPW dispatch, and that's where the buck stops in terms of the drainage.
I'm just gonna parrot back. So you have accountability for solving the problem, but DPW is executing some of the solution.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we'll look to you, if the money's spent, look to you to help solve. It's a lot of history. but now it's time to fix it, so let's look to you to fix it for us, using all the parties.
Yeah, but,
Great,
you know,
thank you.
surveys square one, so that's the beginning of the conversation, yeah.
Evaluate the problem, evaluate the problem.
There is some, because I've read the DPW's MS4 permits, if you're familiar with those, the permits they're required to do for water. And McLennan Detention Basins is on that permit list. They do have a list of it and say they're going to set up monitoring, but this has been kind of a standard line year after year after year, and they haven't done it. And we were going back and forth, we mean the planning department, the conservation commission, DPW,
Right.
who has authority to do this, and that's when David found it lies with the planning department. But personally, it probably should be with DPW because it was set up as a detention basin, as a stormwater management structure. So when we get the survey done, if it comes back that they say you have to dredge the ponds, or you have to change the size of the outflow pipe or whatever, we will have to coordinate, obviously, with DPW. But that's where I just wanted to put some context.
Yeah, and I'm just looking, who's accountable up top, and many people have to help execute the solution, but I think I heard David's gonna be accountable, so that's great clarity.
Other questions on Williamsburg? Sophie?
Can I, more of a general question on our budget books. Did I miss an email? It says it's 95,000 that's being requested with a 10,000 increase.
So that's, it's only 85 we're asking for,
So
that's
level
an
funding
over,
from last year.
yes.
Okay, thank you. And do we know the 2024 actual that's showing is blank in the budget book?
What's on the,
It only has
she'll go back to it, yeah. At the moment, it is, the carry forward was 57, the current balance is scroll down a bit, is 76,425.
Sophie's looking for the actuals for 24, right?
Well, our budget book says nothing was spent as far as actual for 2024, so I'm wondering.
Total expenses was 78,770. Scroll up again.
It's FY 25.
That's FY
25, so FY 24 was 6529.
So the budget book's wrong.
Yeah, we had to go back and forth between Ida and David, the munis system and the other
Okay.
system a week ago, and got these numbers, so these
Okay.
should be accurate. I'll have Ida check it again before Alan, I give it to you, okay?
All right, any other questions on Williamsburg? All right, Alan?
If you dredge these ponds and you say there's arsenic and a lot of other bad stuff in it, would it basically be hazardous waste that we have to dispose of in that way?
I'll let Susan answer that, she's the environmental planner.
It's there.
It depends, so they exceeded certain, standards for under the DEP. But it depends upon what it's characterized as. So when I was looking at it, I told them to look at it for human health, even though the sediment isn't available for exposure to humans, nobody's touching it. And the human health levels are lower than for organisms. So it may or may not be a problem. I think that if we get to the point where we have to dredge, what they'll have to do, we have to get an environmental engineer, and they are going to have to take samples, of what we're dredging, and then find out if that's considered. I doubt it would be, I doubt it would exceed, but, because it's getting more influx, and so it's getting, unless it's getting influx of more metals, but, yeah, so I don't really know, but if we get to that point before we dredge, we will need an environmental engineer to do the testing appropriate with
So you're saying a second survey?
No, won't require. This survey is gonna tell us what to do.
Okay,
If they say dredge,
Yeah.
then we put out a contract to dredge with an environmental
okay,
engineering firm
part of it.
that can do this whole thing, under the current regulations.
Going back to the original design, we designed it as a stormwater detention system to prevent flooding downstream. And as the sediment fills in, it loses that capacity to prevent flooding downstream. So it's engineering design stormwater system needs to be determined.
Alan Jones.
Just for context, can you tell us what's included in the survey, what are the tests done and what are the reports?
I don't have the bid in front of me, but it's on the town website. You can all check my memory. We're doing a bathymetric survey.
What's
So,
that?
yeah, and the analysis of the sedimentation rate essentially takes looking at those blueprints that I found in the archives, determining what levels had changed and in what locations, and doing hydrologic analysis to figure out the sediment transport, i.e. where it's coming from upstream, where it's being deposited, and how built up it's gotten over the years. That should be
So,
it.
so the survey is about sediment, it's not
Yeah.
other stuff, okay.
It's a stormwater problem, basically.
All right, reservoir.
Okay. So the reservoir was formed in 1871 by George Hill as a retention pond for irrigation pond. No, sorry, that's Hills. That's Hills. Sorry, reservoir, 1871. It was prepared for 207 subscribers in the area who were farmers and gardeners, and so it was an irrigation system. And Monroe Brook brings water from the northwest corner, if you're walking around that corner closest to Lexington.
And that's fine.
And that comes from Great Meadows, and then the reservoir then flows into Mill Brook, which runs on the southwest southern area. The enclosed swimming area was created to reduce the impact of decaying sediment and to help with the water quality. And as a kid who swam there in the 70s, I can tell you my light colored bathing suits would turn rust. And so it's much nicer the way it is now. Here's a picture of the pond, and this is from Google Maps, and you get a great view of what happens with the water chestnuts. And so here's Monroe Brook coming in. This section is Lexington. This picture would have been taken after harvesting and before hand pulling. And when they hand pull, do they do this area as well?
As much as they can.
As much as they can. This is Mill Brook coming around and then down, and this is one of the overflows, and this is the other overflow. So if you walk around, you'll see that. When the harvester, mechanical harvester comes, they bring it to the ramp, and then the
Yes.
ramp takes it to this
And DPW
overflow.
takes- yeah.
And then the
dispose of
seeds
it.
dry out to cut down on the cost. And then they collect the seeds and then they take them to be destroyed or whatever.
Same
Is that-
thing, the storm drain. Weekends.
Okay,
The storm drain collection, the storm drain materials.
okay, so they take it wherever they take the storm drain materials. Then, and that happens soon. That happens when the mechanical surveys in June.
Harvesting happens in June
And then this happens throughout the summer and early fall.
with volunteers.
Right. And the key with, next slide. We also do some, we're not quite there yet. Oh, you have that one still.
She has the one version.
She is, you have the older version.
I'll stop it after.
Okay. So the, we do aquatic plant and water surveying, and we prefer to begin annually from April through November to check the water quality and the invasive plants. In 2020, we did some survey mapping that was completed, but we haven't really been monitoring the water in the reservoir since that time.
Irrigation plant, yeah.
And we're wanting to add in monitoring of the water. Try the next slide. Let's see what you got. Okay, this is water chestnut intervention. So in 2020, there was no hand harvesting. And if you look at the bottom, hand harvesting collects over 1,800 baskets of of the plants with their seeds, and that comes to 0.02 tons.
20 tons.
But if you look above, when we do the mechanical harvesting, we collect 136 tons. And that's only over the course of 2 weeks. We would like to increase the mechanical
Twenty
harvesting
tons at the bottom,
to,
20 tons.
that's 20, I did the math, did I do the math wrong?
Yes.
Is a ton still 2,000 pounds?
Yeah.
2,000 pounds.
2,000 pounds, so
It's
38,
almost 20 tons.
okay,
40
sorry,
would
under
be-
20. Oh, okay, so it's 136 and
17,
20.
17, yeah.
Sorry, I did the math wrong. It's still significantly lower than 136 tons.
Right. 20
Um,
is not as significant, 20 tons.
20 tons is not insignificant, so our volunteers are doing great. But the mechanical harvester is doing amazing compared to our volunteers. And we'd like to increase it to 3 weeks for 2 reasons. One, we'd like to collect a little bit of that Lexington section so that we get the seeds and the plants out earlier rather than later, and we get more of them out. The more seeds we get out, because the seeds can last up to 15 years, the less we will have to do in the long run. We are not at a point where we're collecting enough of the seeds early enough in the season to see these numbers go down. If we were to add a 3rd week, then we would start seeing within 3 to 4 years a decrease in the number of seeds we have to collect. Am I correct there?
Yes.
Okay. So that's part of the reason we're asking for an additional about 10,000 so that we can add in that extra week.
So you are anticipating spending 35,000 on
3 weeks of mechanical harvesting rather than under 28 for 2 weeks.
so the 45,000 is
3 weeks in
3
June.
weeks of harvesting. And then actually it's 41 for the 3 weeks and then another 4,000 for the monitoring and treatment as needed.
And some monitoring to the reservoir to see what's going on in detail.
Right.
So I asked this question last year and I just want to confirm that even if tomorrow we snapped our fingers and got rid of the water chestnut, there'll be more invasive underneath that will just flourish. So it'll be a constant battle, right? So there will never be, unless we
Seeds
dredge the
can last
whole
for
thing.
years. Seeds can last for years, but you can reduce the seed bank, because this is a problem.
Right, but we'll get something else. So if you wipe out the water chestnut, there'll be another invasive underneath
Maybe,
that.
some sort.
Well, we know they are.
That's a monitoring.
We know there
for.
are other invasives.
That's what monitoring is for, to determine what's there, what the next stage of treatment might be.
Well, you can look and see, there are other invasives there.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
So we're,
Back to
this is a lifetime, an eternity project, essentially, unless we
Yeah.
do, unless we
Go
dredge.
back to the photo.
Well, at various levels perhaps. The experience has been that if you can control the water chestnuts aggressively over a period of years, the effort goes down considerably.
So Mystic River Watershed Association has realized this in
Talk
parts of the Mystic River. The Mystic River Watershed Association has realized this in parts of the Mystic River,
Yes,
where they've been doing the water chestnut
harvesting,
harvesting
mechanical
every year,
and,
mechanical and,
hand.
right, for years and years, and they're decreased their effort because there's less that's growing there now. And I think we had some statements about that in our annual report, so that's what we're relying on. Yes, we're probably gonna do this for a long time, but if we're consistent about it, which we haven't been, we missed a year for COVID, we've missed years before that on and off, then we start again. And if we can increase it 1 week, get more of it, and be consistent, there is the potential for reducing the mechanical harvesting
The effort required,
over
yes.
time, the effort over time.
But we'll always be fighting some invasive there unless we dredge it.
Not necessarily. I'm not sure that there are
What
other
invasives there
invasives.
There are some few
At the
things
reservoir.
There are,
A few
I
things
think,
there.
there are.
But the question is how much effort that takes to manage them.
All right, questions, Sophie?
Lexington, if I remember from last year correctly, Lexington does nothing
Right.
To assist or on their side. So
Correct.
we're gonna spend an extra 10,000 to attack the Lexington side of the problem that affects our side of the problem, right? Because it's all one big. And where are the discussions with Lexington at this point?
I don't think there are any unless David knows of any. It would require the town manager, I would think, to have that discussion.
I actually talked to the DPW, is it okay if I jump in?
Gotcha.
So I talked to the DPW chair when he was here recently, and he said that he and David can chat and maybe be able to work it out. And that was, when were they here, 2 weeks ago, a week or 2 meetings ago?
Work what out?
Work out your question about working with Lexington.
We had the same question last year.
So the Conservation Commission there
Show
doesn't
the
have
picture again.
any funding ability to do this. So they're amenable. I've talked with them in the past, but they don't control the person.
Right, but I just have a hard time understanding why in our financial situation, Arlington should be paying, our taxpayers should be paying more to specifically address the Lexington side.
Right, the owner of it, you own the land. You own the entire reservoir,
Okay,
in Lexington.
so we own the land, so they have no responsibility, or they do?
No, well, not really, because we're the landowner for the entire reservoir and the surrounding area.
Though they do take some responsibility because when we redid the paths around the reservoir 2 years ago, they did their side.
So they do have a side.
Did they pay for that?
Yeah.
And the
So
side
We
is
didn't pay for
clearly
the
marked
whole,
where the
we
well
didn't
Right.
pay for all around the reservoir.
So Arlington is not the sole owner of this.
Yes.
Oh, it is the owner, oh, it is the owner.
They may be the owner, but Lexington, what I'm saying is Lexington paid for
Contributed.
the path upgrades on the Lexington side when we did that.
But out of the goodness of their heart, because it affects their residents, or because they had a legal responsibility to? I don't know.
I guess for the benefit to the residents. There's no legal responsibility.
Charlie, you had a question before, so.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I won't go through the speech again. I would just like an explanation of why we didn't do more at the reservoir in fiscal '25.
I can address that if I may.
Well, we actually allocated more money than they had before. And there was a substantial balance left over.
Right, because this is year to date. So year to date fiscal '25 and fiscal '25 is not over. Year to date is 27,500. We are planning to do 3 weeks of mechanical harvesting
This
in
June.
June.
This fiscal year.
That will add another 40,000 or so to that number. So we actually are going to be fiscal year '25 expected at the end of June over 60,000 spent on the reservoir.
Okay, so that makes it hard to understand the budget for fiscal '26. But basically, you're saying that we are putting more investment in the reservoir in fiscal '25.
Yes, and we're getting kind of back on track because it's getting confusing with the fiscal years and the calendar years when we have to do the work. And we have to do the work in June.
The best time to do the work.
Right, and so that's caused a little bit of a disconnect between the budget and what we're treating. But we're planning on treating 3 weeks in June, so that number for fiscal year '25 is gonna be over 60,000 for the reservoir.
And so then in fiscal '26, how many weeks does the 45,000 pay?
That's 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
See, we got back on track, so fiscal year, that's gonna be 3 weeks in 2026 June.
Let me see if I can ask the question again.
Okay.
In fiscal '25.
Yeah.
We're doing 3 weeks of,
Treatment in June, but we also, this includes some
2 weeks of the
2
year
weeks
prior.
of the prior year.
okay, so it's
Yeah.
5 weeks, so
Yeah, yeah.
60,000, 5 weeks.
5 weeks, yeah.
And then we're going through a 3-week program at the $45,000 cost.
Right.
Thank you.
Grant, thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things. One is, would you mind if I hand out some props? I happened to be walking around the river the other day and thought that we want to see one of these things.
Be careful, they're sharp.
Yeah, very sharp,
Sharp, yeah,
careful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
spec on those, they're not nice.
You can really see why these guys, get footholds. Thank you, I thought I'd add a little prop,
Yes.
because we are a little. Two things, one is the history of the reservoir, that's nice, but we're kind of being familiar with it and stuff. Actually, it was a reservoir for drinking water. They did that for drinking water, and then it turned out that it wasn't very good drinking water. And then the mill owners, all downstream, sued the town, and they won. So this has got a great little history to it, about great ideas about creating this reservoir, and still to this day, we're having a hard time with this artificial body of water. Draining, if I recall, it's easier to do the harvesting when there's less water in it, is that right? No.
They float to the surface.
Additionally, the machinery that's required, it has a fairly low clearance, but it still has difficulty getting to that Lexington side. There are sandbars
So
and
shallow.
so forth. It gets shallower on the Lexington side. So doing it when it would be lower would necessarily mean we had less area that we were able to treat.
I see, thank you, that's the automatic, that's the machinery.
Yes.
Now what about the 2-ton or 20-ton hand harvest, how's that?
Canoes.
Okay, and again, less water, water it's better to have water than no water.
Yeah, well,
Doesn't
basically.
matter, they can do it in drought, they did it in drought last year.
Well, in the summertime, the reservoir is kept high to maintain the beach area water level.
That's my next segue, exactly right. So that's the only reason why, so if it didn't have to be kept high, would it be easier to manually remove the water chestnuts, theoretically?
Perhaps not, hard to say. You might have less water area perhaps, but it's hard to say how much effect that would be on the hand harvesting.
Okay. How many hand harvests are there? I think there was a big party or something like that.
Yeah, it was,
a
200
great idea, I think, I forget David, I think you're the one that organized that, and we got the
The Mystic River
volunteers,
people. The Mystic River people did.
It's 282 volunteers over the course of a couple events.
Right.
And that's on this
More than
slide
about
here.
10 days, I think, anyway.
Okay,
And are there any plans on doing that?
Yeah.
Again, similar. Same thing, no more, no less, but same amount.
Not the same level, yeah. Basically, we have these volunteers from Niagara because of Mystic River is now under our control. So we have more volunteers coming to the reservoir.
I was hoping that we'd have a big beer fest down there with the band.
Roast the chestnuts.
All right, well, so the water level doesn't really, from an automatic standpoint, it's better to have water in it. And from a hand harvest thing, it doesn't really matter. Is that fair to say? All right, thank you.
I'll toss it.
Well, my questions have been answered, so I'll pass.
Michael?
We had one of those too long, everybody's bright idea discussions last year about buying one of these harvester machines, sharing it with other towns, buying it with other towns. Anything happen on that?
There was no place to store it in town, so DPW objected on the grounds of having additional machine. Town manager and HR looked at it, decided that they needed to hire somebody at a considerable sum annually to be the sole operator of it, and so budgetarily, they did not think that it was going to shake out. There's also union negotiations with DPW as to whose job it would become, which was part of the balancing act when it came to looking to hire a new person. And to my knowledge, they never even broached it with the union. They just thought we would need to create a new role for this and fund it, and town manager / HR said it would be X amount, ergo, no.
Also, benefit of the contract is that if in the future we have less need for mechanical harvesting, just change the contract. on having the machine. So basically, we can adjust that contract to the work required.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions before we move on to Hills Pond? All right, Hills.
Okay. Okay, come down to when there's a green one. Oh, no, you're above it, you're past it there. Go back one. Yeah. So Hills Pond was initially built as an irrigation reservoir for George Hill's farm in the mid-1800s. It has a clay-lined bottom. At its deepest point, it's about 6 to 10 feet deep. Is that, if I remember correctly? It was over my head. I was surprised at that in a couple places. And it has two primary sources of water, just rainwater and runoff. So it suffers low water quality and invasive plants and algae blooms. The primary factors of both of those are the fertilizer and animal wastes that get drained from it. We have 4 aeration pumps on it, and that reduces the need to use chemicals to manage or to keep the water quality good. We are talking about a no-mow zone of 4 to 10 feet vegetation buffer strip around the pond, but at the moment that only exists in a few areas, correct?
No,
So most of the pond is 4 to 6?
most of the pond has a path right up against it.
Right,
There's
right,
only
that-
one area with grass near it, so,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, but we had made signage for that, didn't we? Not for Hills Pond?
Nope.
Okay, sorry.
Nothing.
Let's see, we do have monthly professional visits for monitoring the water, and then, we have many plant invasives in the water itself?
They are well under control right now.
Okay,
The only thing we do have trouble with is the occasional algal blooms.
okay. Do we spend money on treatment for each year for the?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're under control, but that's because we're spending a certain amount of money on it?
Right, we spend money on monthly testing of the water,
Okay,
and then they do treat as needed.
okay,
Usually each treatment, they come in and they spray only half the pond because the chemicals dissipate throughout the pond.
okay.
And they've found that has been working, so we're doing half treatments instead of full treatments.
Perfect, okay.
So you're anticipating spending 65-20 this year on Hills. What else is that? Anything is that?
Monitoring and treatment, I think, right?
I'm sorry, can I shut the door? I can't hear you guys over the sound now.
Basically the same as last year, monitoring and treatment as needed.
So the money is mostly spent on monitoring the pond and treating. Because it is a heavily used pond with children and people fishing and dogs, they try to make sure that it maintains a certain level of water quality. It's not swimming quality, but it's at least you're not gonna burn your hands off from something.
And if you look over the course of the years since FY '23, this is what we've spent on the reservoir to keep it at this level. Sorry, Hills Pond.
All right, Michael.
Who are the users of Hills Pond?
Who are the users?
Charlie's one of them.
Yeah.
Money Rocks Park.
Well, I
It's
guess
not, yeah.
Catch a big trout the other day.
the pond itself is unnatural.
Correct.
We're fighting to keep it against the forces of nature.
Just like the reservoir.
Yes, but the reservoir has a whole constituency of humanoid users,
I agree.
which Hills does not. Why is it worth the money?
Hills does.
People fish
Hills,
there,
yeah.
there's lots of fish fishing there.
I wanna ask the question, is it worth the money we are spending year after year to keep it in existence? Tell me why.
Do you want me to answer that, or is somebody, okay?
Go ahead.
So
It's a sincere question.
it is aesthetically, it's very pleasing to people. It's the largest green space in Arlington, so it's kind of the little center part that everybody walks around.
Heavily used.
It is a habitat for various forms of waterfowl. There are kids there fishing and adults there fishing almost every weekend, and then there are people skating in the winter. And we do have a wetland that houses muskrats and other red-winged blackbirds and other various animals. Turtles, frogs, it's crayfish. It's quite amazing to go down there, especially at 5 o'clock in the morning when no one's there, and to find everybody. We have a coyote family that relies on the pond for water throughout the winter. We have fox. We have yet to see a deer, thank heavens, for our gardens. But it is really just a little gem within our town that people really adore and love.
Thank you.
Josh and then David.
I think my point was made.
David.
I just want to add, in my lifetime, I've seen 3 weddings here as well.
Oh, wow, okay.
More than 3.
What I've seen.
2 more days.
Any more questions about Hills? All right, Spy.
Okay. So Spy Pond is a kettle hole pond. It's the most heavily used recreational space in town. However, the other 2 are very much used as well. Its northeast shore has the Boys and Girls Club and Scannell and Spy Pond Parks and the boat ramp. It's also filled only from groundwater and stormwater. The large storm drain empties. There's a large storm drain that empties into it from Route 2 by Pleasant Street. There are 2 storm drains at the southeast basin at Linwood Street off of Mass Ave and Pond Lane, and another one that comes in from Lake Street off of Alfred Street. The pond overflows into Little Pond, which is in Belmont, and Little River, and then it goes into Alewife, which is also part of our water body system. The aquatic history is that we've had problems with Spy Pond with large amounts of blue-green algae and other invasives since the 1880s and the 1920s. So it's been an ongoing problem, and here's just some of the history. We've also, one of the things I remembered as a kid, and it's been happening since the 1918 is drownings when the invasive plants have gotten and the weeds have gotten higher. And I remember in the 70s, a couple teenagers drowning over the course of my childhood and teen years. So that's another reason to keep the invasives and the other plants that are native under control. The other thing that happens is the acreage gets covered by curly-leaf pondweed, and that decreases the ability to go boating in the area, rowing, kayaking, canoeing, because you can't get the paddles through the water. They did used to have a Google Maps that had parts of Spy Pond covered, but it's not there anymore. So I don't have a picture of it. Next one. In 2022, MassDOT finally dredged out the northwest corner sandbar and removed 3 to 4 feet of sand, and they removed the pillars that guided water into the sandbar area. Do you remember they were doing work along Route 2 a couple of years ago? And this is part of that project. There are 2 hydrodynamic separators. One is the DPW manages on Alfred Street at that drain, and there's another one that a private resident put in. It may have been part of an ACC requirement.
Part of a permit.
Yeah,
right.
part of a permit. And so there are 2 on the Kelwin Manor and the Alfred Street side, closer to Lake Street, that also help manage the water.
So you're expecting to spend 45,000 on Spy Pond,
Yes.
for what?
And that is primarily for monitoring and treatment of the aquatic invasives. However, the other problem with Spy Pond is we're having Phragmites show up. They were just over near St. Elizabeth Island, and then they've also appeared by, not the Boys and Girls Club, but the club that's next to it. Yeah, the Elks. And now more recently on the Kelwin Manor side, there's another plot as well. So we're seeing the Phragmites expand, and so we would like an additional 10,000, that's why it's as high as it is this year, to start treating the Phragmites to get them under control and prevent them from getting out of hand.
So why hasn't there, this goes back to Reed's Brook, there's been no Phragmite treatment at Reed's Brook, and that has been expanding every year. Why is there, has not at least that been tackled?
We haven't conducted any invasive activities at McLennan to date. We've never requested funding for it or.
Well, you know Phragmites are there and they've been expanding. And you want money for Phragmites for Spy, I'm just curious why McLennan has been ignored, its Phragmite problem has been ignored.
I think the two water bodies have different, different approaches somewhat because of the different use. So Spy Pond has, a lot of water craft use, that McLennan does not have. I don't even think McLennan has much fishing, or I don't know that there are fish there, there might be. But it's not the same use, so we haven't managed them the same way. Some of the management for Spy Pond, as Carolyn explained, is because of the residential use and the recreational use, the teams that use it for, boat racing and things like that. So that's been part of the management focus, and I think that's why it's been different.
Recent activities there.
Yeah. Questions on Spy? Any questions on Spy?
Yeah.
Had anything else to add about Spy or anything else? Carolyn?
No, I mean, if you go through the slides, you'll see a lot more detail.
Jen? And
So-
I'm opening up to all, any additional questions.
Okay,
at this
so
point.
then I have one other question. So, not naming any names, but one of the things I've heard about Spy Pond is that there's a lot of frustration with some of the local landowners who are sort of unwilling to cut back on their fertilizer use to protect. Is that a fair assessment of what's, you know, what's fair?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, all right, so that,
Oh, we do leaflet
right,
for fertilizer use.
but there isn't a frustration feeling that,
That
okay,
is actually
Okay,
a town-wide issue,
got it.
because fertilizer anywhere.
Right, it's not just people who are
That's
butters,
right,
it's
that's right.
anybody, okay.
But the biggest gain is Massachusetts has made it commercial, you can't buy a regular fertilizer with phosphorus in it.
Oh, is that true? Okay.
And that's something that just happened in the last 5-6 years.
Okay.
something like that. It's been a big gain.
Okay, good, that's good to hear.
Could I answer?
Yeah.
Spy Pond also receives something like 50 stormwater pipes going into it, so the watershed contributing to that water body is absolutely massive. I mean,
Right.
Arlington
Which way?
Heights to the west, all of the surrounding area, et cetera. And so anything, when it rains, and
Anybody's
somebody's got
fertilizer.
fertilizer
Got
on
it,
the ground, it's going into the street and then it's coming down in the Spy Pond.
okay, interesting.
One other issue is it's actually, most of the fertilizer in Spy Pond is not coming in from the outside. Most of it, the Spy Pond, it's in the shallow areas, there's much more muck,
I see, so it's
Um,
historical.
and much more muck than there is water. It's actually a muck pond in a sense, and that's all historic.
Okay. And then, I'm just sort of still confused about the numbers. So what's the 85 versus the 95, and just looking at that graph?
So my understanding is we're asking for 85.
So what, in terms of looking at this, where is that 10,000 being taken from? Or is there extra money being used from?
Oh, so why did you see 95 before?
Yeah. Why does that say 95? Where is it?
Where does it say that? No, it doesn't.
We're spending 95 in fiscal year 26, but we're using some of the money
Survey
that,
of fund reserve.
Oh, okay.
that's on reserve, so.
Oh, okay,
so
you have
we
to add up
always
the other
have to
numbers,
keep
okay.
some
Got it,
over
okay,
because
I
of
get it.
the timing of when we.
Yeah, no, I was,
Yeah.
looking at the wrong things, okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, Water Bodies, for coming and presenting.
Thank you.
Also, like to promote the annual report. Should be on the website pretty soon, I think.
And you all have that.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, you all have that.
The last calendar year.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to take up the capital budget again. I'll turn it over to Daryl for some explanation.
So I promise this should be, well, I hope this should be quick. In the drafting of the article, warrant article, which is 50 this year for the capital budget, we identified a discrepancy between the actual budget and what we presented last Wednesday of $25,000 due to cost of a Ford F-250 for the fire department. So the fiscal 26 capital budget increases by $25,000. The items we voted on don't change. I don't think there's a need to revote unless we decide collectively as a committee that we want to revote. So if that's clear, basically the fiscal 26 capital budget is $25,000 higher than what was presented last week.
But isn't that what we voted on?
No, we vote on the actual recommendation, so that the page that's up there.
Yeah, we voted the 24,582.
Is the debt service. And we voted on pages 41 through 43. And 42 and 43 were just the transfer, the reappropriation.
Right, so that doesn't change at all, but
Right.
back on, if you can go to
That
41.
does not change either.
But that's the number we voted on, you're saying that number stays?
But we actually vote on the debt service, and this debt service won't get incurred until next year.
Oh, we voted on the appropriation.
Yeah, we voted on that, and that's what we voted on, the 24th.
I was told that number isn't changing at all.
We vote on the bond,
How can that be?
we vote on the bond.
Charlie?
Madam Chair, I would like to recommend that this is not really a material issue, and that the chair and the vice chairs get to resolve it with the capital plan. As a motion.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
So is that 25,000 within our discretionary?
I think, as I understand, Charlie is moving the chair and the vice chair work out the exact number if it has to change. And that the body is giving us authority to do that without coming back for a formal vote. So it would only be at most a 25
Administrative
swing.
change, if you will.
Yeah.
At most, it would be a 25,000 swing, if at all. Any questions on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
Promise.
Just a question, I noticed that a draft of the actual article wording just came in, is it correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so if there's a number in there, or the numbers that we can use, I mean,
That was
the numbers we vote on have to match.
What happened was, and the reason I sort of pushed on capital committee for us to bring it up is, this actually came up at the meeting. Apparently Timor informed Lauren Costa that he had just found out that the truck actually cost 90,000, not the 60.
It did seem cheap for an F-350.
Yeah. The article that was drafted, Lauren knew at that point the right number, so the article is correct.
Okay, so we just need to match the article.
Yeah.
The votes.
All right, so that, we did that. All right, the next, let's do retirement, and then I want to do the parking budget and the parking benefits district budget. So we have Article 75 that Michael and Charlie were very prepared to present to us the last time, and we were all very confused because it didn't seem we had anything in front of us, so we did. So I'll turn it over to you to add on Article 75.
Michaela, can you put the retirement presentation up? Please? Thank you.
Charlie and I received the draft of this. We worked up our consideration of it and what to recommend here. Then when it came up several nights ago, already it wasn't in our budget book. We inquired of the select board's person, was effusively apologetic, saying, oh yes, of course, pension, Pituitary Pension Board had submitted it, it should have been included to us. So with apologies for the confusion, Article 75 asks the town, through a vote of town meeting, if we would accept the provision of state law that allows us to recalculate how retirees are benefited by a cost of living increase. That's COLA, cost of living adjustment. Presently, cost of living adjustments are figured on the first $15,000 of retirement benefit, only that much. This article would ask the town if it would accept the provisions of state law that would allow us to amend that, to increase it from the first 15 to the first $16,000 of retirement. And that is what we're recommending town meeting consider. So it's a cost of living adjustment on an additional $1,000. If it's 3% from one year to another, it's 3% of $1,000, $300 per person, right? So what does it actually end up costing us annually, and what does it end up costing over time if we were to vote this? And can we figure what the cost of this would be in terms of what is the drag, you could call it, on the investment base that is generating all of the money that goes towards retirement funds? Questions we've outlined on this slide. Go to the next slide, please. Where do we stand in comparison with the other towns that town manager office has for years selected as comparisons or benchmarks for Arlington, the town manager 12? Well, presently we're right in the middle, right there, the sort of buff-colored, between Winchester and Arlington, ranging from Belmont figuring cost of living increases on $13,000 base up to Milton at 18. So we are within the range of the towns we've used for other benchmark purposes based upon demographics, town, tax base, things like that. So how much of a change would this be? Well, let's go on and keep on looking at it. Next slide, please. This one was in our previous presentation. Michaela, if you could blow this up, or I'll go to the screen. Maybe I can do it right here.
Yeah, thanks. This is the biggest.
Yeah, Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've only been doing this for 2 years and you've got much more experience with it than I do. We are looking at a future date when, if the money that we can keep on putting into our investment that we grow in order to pay retirement continues to grow, as a whole lot of very well-educated people are saying we should be able to make a reasonable and prudent presumption based upon past returns, that we will get to a certain point, fiscal year 2034, where our funding amortization of unfunded liability comes down to 0. We are there. We've reached that day of jubilee when we are fully covered by the amount of money that we have invested, based upon all the parameters of the present. A cost of living adjustment figured on the first $15,000 of retirement benefit. And we'll get there in about 8 years. If we change one of the presumptions in those formulae, that we're going to go to a cost of living adjustment figured on a base of $16,000, well, a sort of non-actuarial way of summarizing that is it's going to take us another year. It'll take us an additional year of making our regular contribution to get to the point where we are fully funded and we can expect the profits from this corpus of investment to pay for what we needed to pay. One additional year. What's the dollar value of having to continue our rate of investment for another year? That's where the next slide comes up. And what we tried to work backwards was, well, you can look at it as putting one more year on the investment plan at the very end. But in terms of today's money, what would that be? What would that equate with? Another, apply the discount rate, as Charlie is fond of saying, history major here, thinking, okay, the value of that additional contribution expressed in today's dollars with an expected rate of return on it. I need to do it in word problems to understand. Present value of that additional year comes out to this number, about $4.25 million. Or to turn the word problem around, $4.25 million of extra money today, plus an expected rate of return of about 7% or so as we went through when we did the original presentation, because that's what we've been getting for so many years. That's what Article 75 is asking us to spend in terms of the effective present dollars. So it's how you look at it. Is it 3% more on an additional 1,000 for every retiree for every year, growing their base? Yes, it's that. But it's also the impact of $4.25 million if we had it to invest today. That's what it would take. Because it's a promise 9 years out to put in about $8 more million. to finish our investments. Because this money comes from an investment pool and any additional pull on that curve, again, visualizing here, because that's how I understand it, that's pulling down that curve, that's pulling down that rate of return. So it means we eventually get, if the markets continue to do what they've done for so many years, we'll get to the point where we're fully funded by making our contributions, but that's the drag. That's the additional drag on the whole investment. Article 75, in that way of looking at it, asks the town to commit to spending about $4.25 million more. Yes.
How did you calculate that $4 million?
We looked at what Charlie did. Or I can explain, but Charlie, go ahead.
Okay, so there's two tables there.
Yeah.
First table is the 8-year table.
Mm-hmm.
The second table is the 9-year table.
Yeah.
So the net present value of the 8-year table is $4 million less than the net present value of the 9-year table. Similarly, the future value is $8 million higher for the 9 million than for the 9-year table than for the 8-year table. And the values that go into that, these two tables are the Stone Actuarial Company's payment schedules.
Oh, okay, but back up a minute. I'm asking you how you calculate it. So it's the added money is $30 a year, 3% of $1,000
Okay,
per employee, and we have approximately 800 people on retirement.
you have to think about it. This is all buried in the actuarial
Right.
calculations. I'm not an actuary, so I can't
Mm-hmm.
give you all of the details. But you have, I spent a lot of time thinking about what's going on here. So, and we have 632 retirees that are in
Okay.
play. So what happens is the first year,
Mm-hmm.
we give every employee another $30.
Right.
So that takes, what is it, 30 times 600 is 18,000.
25.
That takes 18,000 out of the bank account.
Mhm.
Okay, and gives it to them. Now, that goes into their base.
Right.
So it's out of the bank account all of those years. Then the next year, go out 1 year, and they all got a raise now, 3%, they got some sort of raise. So then you're taking that 3% again, only now it's coming out of the bank account for 8 years. Then the next year, you slide out 1 year, you take that $30, you give it to them, it goes into the base, so it's out of the bank account for 7 years. So you keep, that keeps accumulating. Now, when I do that calculation, and I did it on a spreadsheet, sort of manually, just as a check, it adds up to about $4 million. And it's not an actuarially accurate calculation. But it sort of gets you in the ballpark of what the actuarial calculation gets you to.
Okay, so, are you making a recommendation one way or another?
Next slide, if you can, or two,
This one or the next one?
next one. After a lot of discussion, Charlie and I thought, no,
Okay, so you are recommending no action,
recommend no action on Article 75.
and is there a second? Charlie, you're gonna second that?
I'll second.
All right, so questions, John, Jennifer.
So, I guess the first question is, the difference between no action and no?
No action is no.
Okay, so we're voting it down.
Well, if you follow the recommendation, we are recommending.
So we're talking, we're saying we're neutral, we're saying no, we
We
disagree.
either say yes or no. We have to say
Okay,
something.
no, yep. Just clarifying, so, yeah, I'm gonna agree with no, so I guess that's my own question.
All right, Jennifer,
Oh, I just, thinking about this in terms of, present value, net present value doesn't make that much sense to me. If we have $4 million today and we wanna see how much grows in 8, 9 years, yes, what's the present value? What's the future value? Those calculations make a lot of sense, right? But what we're really looking at is extending the time period where we might have to put more money into this. That feels like the more relevant issue. Like, do we want to extend the time period where we have to put more money into this? And that means that money is not available to have other goals that our town will have in 2034. So that's just sort of my gut feeling about it.
Jordan?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like it's minimum gain and it's just gonna end up costing us much more money in the future, so I think that makes sense to support not voting for it.
I would agree with that interpretation.
Can I just make a comment?
Okay.
In fairness to the retirees, and a slightly different view is if you look at these actuarial schedules in detail, they don't change for the first 8 years between the two versions. So the actuary came up with a financial plan that basically kicks the cost into the last year, as Jennifer said.
Right. But we're not paying more now, so that we're just gonna extend the
We're giving
time
it to
period
our
that we're gonna pay
grandchildren
money.
or whoever the next generation is.
Yeah.
But it's not a small number, because at the end of the 9th year, it's $8 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, can I?
Jordan?
No, just potentially in 10 years, when we get to that point, it's gonna, to your point, Charlie, it's gonna cost us a lot more money when could very well be still dealing with override issues.
Exactly.
Do you know how much more we would pay this year if we wanted to do this and keep it at 8 years?
$4 million. That's what the present value is.
Okay.
Other questions?
And then it's $4 million more next year or the year after?
No, you pay, it's a lump sum, we put a lump sum payment of $4 million into the fund. We wouldn't have to change the fund at all, they could get the increase.
Okay. If we wanted to smooth that out, have it go 8 years, but pay some this year, some more next year, some more the year after that.
I don't know how to do that, that's involves, they've got all sorts of things in there, like the population changes and other stuff. So I have to, the only 2 pieces of data we have is the 8-year plan and the 9-year plan.
Rebecca?
Thank you. Could you please just walk through that again, the explanation for Annie? I'm just not following how, if we have 632 retirees and each one gets an extra $30.
Micaiah, can you give me
no.
I don't have it in that model, but if you give me a connection, I can actually put it up on the screen. Can you do that?
I think you have to sign in, Charlie.
Yeah, do you want me to send you the link?
No, that's gonna take too long. So, think about it this way, everybody. Across the top, you have years.
Mm-hmm.
And down the side, you have years. Okay? So in the first year, let's just make it easy, the number's $10,000. So that's the amount that we're gonna pay all the retirees with this extra benefit. That goes into their base. But if you're paying that, it's no longer in the bank account that's growing to get rid of the unfunded liability. So for that first year, you have 9 years of $10,000 not going into the bank account to reduce the unfunded liability. Then in the second year, now, you're moving out a year on the schedule, and let's say now it's 10,000 times 3% or something, I don't know. No, actually, it'll just be the same number, 10,000. So now you have 8 years at 10,000 a year. And then the third year, you go out two years now, because the first two, and now it's 10,000 a year. So in this matrix, all of those contributions to the employees, they're certainly getting their minimal, and I agree that it's a minimal number. But if you get it all together, it's money that's not in the fund that's reducing the unfunded liability.
Because of the growth in the fund that otherwise that 10 or 18,000 would
Would have
experience over
generated, that's right,
9 years and then the next year.
Yeah,
I see.
exactly.
So it's the growth in the investments.
that's right. And that's what the actuary has done with these two tables, somehow.
Okay. Thank you, that's very helpful. Thank you.
It's like taking the common financial advice of what is the magic of compound interest. You make money on your money, you make money on your money's money. This is the reverse.
Got it.
Other questions on Article 75? Jennifer?
Just a question of who is asking for this? That's, I'm not totally clear with that.
Contributory pension.
I would have to say
Contributory
this,
pension,
you're
are
on the
they-
contributory retirement board.
And is there an impetus for this? Were their members asking, so it just,
I don't honestly know.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, this was presented to us by Rich Greco, who is the administrator, and he's the guy that puts these budgets together every year in the warrant articles. I will say that you have to, it's not that big of a deal to the average retiree. What is a big deal to the average retiree is the article that we voted the other night, where we raised the floor to 50% of whatever the current salary is. If somebody falls below that, that's a big benefit. But because if suddenly, let's just say that the person that's running the facilities, if that job classification jumps up by $20,000 a year, that has a big impact on the retired facilities manager. So that's a big benefit for the retirees. This one I have a hard time.
Yeah.
You can see in that chart that Michael had up there before, we're right smack in the middle of those towns. So there's I don't feel like there's a compelling reason to change it.
All right, any other questions before we take a vote? Sophie?
Since this is proposed by the state as an option, what are other towns doing? Well, we don't know, right?
Well, this is a snapshot of what other towns are doing
Well,
up
no, but
up to this point.
on this new specific
Well, this has been
option.
around for a while.
Oh, it has, okay. How long has it been around?
I don't know, but
So it's not new.
it's not new.
Has it ever been taken up by town meeting before?
Not by this town meeting, not by the retirement board. But you can see, towns could set it wherever they want, right?
Right, I just thought this was something new
No,
the state was letting us do, but it's not new.
It's not.
Okay,
It's up to the town to decide where you set it.
okay.
Anything else? All right, take a vote. There's a recommendation of no action, it's been seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 for no action. Those opposed? 1, and abstentions. 2 abstentions.
And I would
He's not
point out that Dave McKenna left the room.
Right, so abstentions 2, right? What's the vote?
14-1-2.
14-1-2, and I note that Dave McKenna was not present for either the debate or the vote. All right, so thank you. That is done.
Thank you.
Parking. Let's do the parking benefit district, and Michael, I don't know if we need to redo the vote we took on the parking budget.
I don't think we need to revote the parking budget. Parking, town treasurer told us as the administrator of the parking budget that the one person that was being paid in the parking budget was going to receive a particular number to offset the impact of her salary. That very same afternoon that we took up the parking budget, we got a quick email from Assistant Town Manager, McGee, and it had a different figure, lower figure in there for what he said the parking fund was going to offset this employee's salary by. So if we're confident that Town Treasurer Wayman has the right number, then her budget is fine. It at least raises the question of, does the parking fund know who they're paying and how much in offsets? And how much do they have when they concluded that email with a rather blithe statement, and any shortages from this year's parking fund will be made up out of funds reserved from past years, without detail of what that reserve is and how many outflows there are promised and how many people's salaries are offset actually by water and sewer. We don't have those details. So I have more questions about, water and sewer offsets than I do about the parking budget, which I don't think we have.
I'm confused. So the offset in the parking budget, the 38,390 are water and sewer?
That's what we were told by the treasurer.
But the parking benefits district budget has a 12,800 offset to the parking budget.
Which is considerably less.
What?
Which is considerably less than what the treasurer thinks her person's salary is going to be offset by.
Do we know whether the offsets, the 38,390 are only water and sewer, or whether they're?
That's the only information we have.
Well, actually, I looked down this salary sheet, it says a parking fund offset of 38,390.
Sorry, I might have misspoken, it's supposed to be parking fund offset.
Maybe to confuse matters, if you go to the police budget, they have a parking fund offset of 79,000.
Right, there's no place where so far we've seen a total, all offset money is paid by the parking fund to the following departments.
I would read that to understand that the money coming in through the meters, that's where that money's coming from?
Yes.
So I don't see where the water department comes in.
It's not.
Okay.
Water was misspeaking.
Okay, yeah, so. I have one question, and just like kind of a high level question. I feel like, I think they said they were bringing in like 400,000 from the parking meters, 420,000.
I think Alex McGee had estimated like 450.
It seems kind of arbitrary. I would think that this entire budget would be offset. Like, why do they just happen to,
Well, along with not having a total of how much is in the parking fund and a list of historical commitments to various salary offsets, we don't have.
Yeah.
Other than the town manager is in charge, we don't have any information on how this is run.
Got it.
Well, we need information. Charlie?
So, Madam Chair, thank you. Having trouble recalling what we're actually voting on. Because, just for the record, I opposed this parking district when it was first proposed, because I consider it balkanization of town revenues. But nonetheless, I believe that under the statute under which it exists, the town manager can spend whatever he wants. It doesn't go before town meeting as a budget item. The only indirect budget might be some money that they use to defray the expense of enforcement or something to that effect, or maybe some costs in the treasurer's office. I don't know if I'm expressing that correctly, but I don't think that we are approving a budget. We're reviewing a budget which the town manager at the time agreed to do with the finance committee in exchange for the accepting this legislation.
So town meeting is being asked to endorse it,
To endorse it.
Like we've done for several years, in each budget. So Michael, you did the parking budget, the parking benefits district budget last year?
Yes,
Have you talked to Alex McGee about these numbers?
I have not.
What other questions do people have for Michael to bring to Alex?
What does it have to do with Dorchester?
Yeah, I think the offset is, has nothing to do with water and sewer, it has to do with
Is it just meters, or is it also fines?
Fines go differently.
Fines all meters.
Fines go to the general fund.
Now, last year we were presented with not just this, but as I recall, what they had in reserve.
That's what I looked at.
So,
Isn't it on there?
no,
How much they're taking out of reserve, but not how much is left.
and I remember they had a very large reserve, and I remember last year,
Yeah,
people saying, we wanted to see that being used.
I know it's on here, it's beginning fund balance. Way down at the bottom, beginning fund and ending fund balance. Presumably, we know, yeah, so we're assuming they're gonna end FY 25 with $700,000. And the carry forward in FY 24 was 803.
What document are you looking at?
I am looking at the parking fund budget that is in the meeting folder.
Okay.
And if you look at the bottom of it, you'll see it.
That was
What page is the parking budget itself on?
70.
70.
So we need more information, Michael. John?
I'm just gonna point out that there's kind of a detailed process in our town bylaws about how this works. And that if you read the warrant, we're actually saying we endorse what's going on through the bylaws. So it looks like on or before February 1st, current fiscal year, the parking implementation and governance committee puts forth a revenue estimate, and then they can put forth the revenue expenditures. So it sounds like this is all like outside of the budget, and it's all through the bylaws. And town meeting only endorses it, they don't appropriate it.
Right.
Yeah, so the kind of answers a few questions, like where that 400 grand is going.
Alan and then Annie.
Well, just aside from that, we should make sure that the offsets in the parking benefit district budget match the police and parking offset.
Right.
If they don't, then we just look stupid.
Which they don't, they didn't last year.
Somewhere in parking benefit district, there should be a number that matches the two offsets. That we voted, whatever we will vote.
Annie?
Yeah, well, I think what Alan said just explains what I'm looking at. So if you look at the parking fund budget, okay, there's a line for parking enforcement / admin, and the total amount of 2026, their 2026 budget for that is $117,454. And then if you look at the parking budget,
Pretty close to the encumbrance in the benefit district budget.
yeah. if you
I
look
think
at-
that's probably where it is for the numbers.
Right, so the parking budget itself, the offset is like 38,390, and then there must be something in the police budget as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are the two offsets are in the police budget and the parking budget. If you add them together, they're pretty close to, they're like 117 something. So they're
Right,
pretty close.
117
In other words,
something is what's in the
can
budget.
someone explain to me what the encumbrances is in the parking benefit district budget?
Encumbrances?
What do you mean encumbrances?
Yeah.
111,314. Well,
No,
actually,
no,
never
no.
mind, that's FY 25 or zero.
Yeah, no, if you look at FY 26,
Well, where in that
It's
budget are the offsets?
it is parking enforcement / admin, that line. That's $117,000. So that's paying for the parking officers in the police budget, and it's paying for the parking, a part of the parking person's salary.
But the numbers aren't right.
How do we, what do you mean the numbers
So-
aren't right?
If you add the parking fund offset the 38
Yeah,
and the police, you get 117.
I don't know, I'm not looking at the police, it's gonna be different, the police is gonna add it up, that would probably be more. Alan said he thought it was about 117.
I think that's right.
Yeah, 117,
Parking
454.
enforcement admin.
Was it?
You add the offsets from police and then parking in the town manager's budget, it comes to exactly the parking enforcement admin.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that's the
Yeah,
line.
that's, so it's correct. It's
Okay.
correct.
Alright, so you got that. Meter operations, we need more detail about what the improvements are and what is left in the reserve. Can you get that for us, Michael?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And so it seems like the parking budget is fine, so we don't need to revisit that.
Right.
Alright, so if you can get that information, I know last year we got more detailed sheet on that. Alright, so hopefully we can get that information by Wednesday and deal with that. Alright, all right, let's do budgets if we have them. Jordan, can you do motor equipment? Thank you.
Makai, can you bring it up?
Madam Chair,
It's on.
just a question. Do all the parking meters in the town, are they all part of the, parking district? In other words, is it,
Does all the money collected through the meters in town go to the parking fund, which benefits the parking benefit district as well as other offsets?
yes, is that, that's my question.
understanding is yes.
Okay, so it includes the, the parking meters behind the, center and behind the, bank and
Correct.
all those.
Railroad lot. Russell Commons lot, yes, it all goes into the same.
Okay, take it, Jordan.
Great, so, just to refresh everyone's memory and for those of you who are new to the committee, so motor vehicle repairs, division within, DPW. So they're responsible for the, maintaining, the number's 75 there, it's actually over 105, vehicles that they have ranging from, light duty, small cars, medium to heavy duty, that's, including, front end loaders, backhoes, excavators, tractors, heavy dump trucks, small dump trucks, utility, trucks, snow fighters, those are the big ones you see, the salting and the plows, 2 street sweepers, sewer flushing trucks, rubbish pickups, rubbish packers, compression trucks, and then kind of other different specialty utility vehicles. If you go to our webpage, on the DPW's website, you can get some more information on exactly what they have. But really, they maintain, the point I'm trying to make is they maintain a lot of the town's vehicles that they use, for all the operations that they use, both year round and seasonal. It's quite a lot that they're responsible for. I didn't, this is the 3rd year I've done the budget and I don't think I realized it was quite that number before. So some staffing vacancies, currently the supervisor of motor vehicle repairs has been vacant. Once we get into the budget, you'll see that there's some out of grade pay that's been making that up. And then recently, we had met with the DPW, 2 motor equipment repair men had left. So we had talked originally when we gave the overview about the fleet management system, this GPS vehicle that they have right now in 9 of the vehicles that they use. It's mostly operational right now. They've been equipped to mostly track like snow and street sweeping to make sure that they can track the routes, make sure, see when they've been done and to see if they've missed anything. And it's also got this great component where it actually kind of diagnoses the equipment that it's on as well if there are any problems with them. They can kind of check have the remote access to check if there are, and like kind of run like a diagnostic program. So that's currently what's in place. And when, as we had talked about before, the kind of the next step is getting that fleet management software to help do more of like the larger tracking repairs, almost like what you would see in like a full like auto service shop where you can, you get a vehicle that comes in, you diagnose it, you enter exactly what's been done, you can track problems over time, and you really just have a lot more access to be able to track, the repairs and then the life over the vehicle. So again, that's something that, we finally, there was some time where the deputy DPW director position had been vacant. That position is now filled, and once we get the supervisor position full, I think that there's going to be more effort to try to finally get this online, and I think the DPW director was pretty optimistic and pretty excited about this. So something that hopefully if we do this this budget next year, that will be something that we can report they've made some more progress on. And then something else we'd like to just point out, some of vehicle repairs when they do need to get contracted out, the vehicles they are becoming more expensive for both the labor and for the parts. Prices are going up, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Next slide, please. So the actual, getting into the actual budget itself. Sorry, so getting into the actual budget, there are not a lot of changes. As I mentioned before, there was with some of the vacancies that they've had, you'll see that the out of grade pay for the 2024 actuals was a little bit higher. So one of the questions that came in, just the out of grade pay has consistently been high year over year, every year that we've done the budget. And again, I think that comes to vacancies and especially in the supervisor positions. So refresher contracted services, so that's where the outside repairs are performed and that's where they're paid for. So fiscal year 24, we're budgeted for $55,000 this year. So you can see the fiscal year 24 actuals were about 76,000. Fiscal year 23 was about 24,000. It's a very hard number to try to predict accurately, just because you never know what's going to break and need to be contracted outside. Most of the repairs are done in-house. I think with the expertise, and this is something we've checked on every year to just make sure that that the department is able to perform a large amount of services in-house, and I think we've gotten very it's very clear that most of what gets done in-house, from the routine maintenance to some of the larger repairs, they have the capability to do just about any type of repair. It's really only a matter of when a certain expertise needs to be used to repair something, or when they just don't have the equipment to do something. But generally, most of the repairs they're able to do in-house using their staff. Which is a great value to the town. So materials and supplies, so you'll see There's the increase of $15,000 to the material supplies. So this is where we pay for all of the outside parts that we use to repair our vehicles. So I think this was an adjustment to try to account for the increases in prices that we're seeing in parts. There's the potential for tariffs to be in place, and I think that's primarily going to affect the parts. So I think that's a number that we should just continue to look at and monitor. Should that be really affected? But we did like to see that, based on the fiscal year 24 actuals, that they were trying to make the proper adjustment to fit what the actual need is going to be. So a question that came in: how many vehicles are electric? So there's one fully electric vehicle in town, and then there's a few hybrids. The fully electric vehicle is a tree warden truck. So currently, so this is something that we should keep an eye on as we move more towards electrification and the hybrids, just because you need that level of expertise. And a lot of these systems, once you start getting into the electrics and the hybrids, they start looking more like computers than they actually do cars. And that trying to get access to that technology from the dealerships can be a challenge. So most of the medium and heavy duty trucks right now, there's kind of debate in the DPW world about whether it's a good idea to move to the medium and the heavy duty trucks. Currently, most of them are still the combustion engines. We haven't made that switch yet. I think it's just kind of an unreliable at this point, because, and especially if you're using, when we start buying the larger vehicles, especially for like the snow operations, right? At this point, it's just not particularly practicable for them to do so. But again, as more electric options are purchased by the town, I think Mike right now is confident, but if we do get more electric vehicles, I think it would be good to, just continue to keep an eye on, how much is going out and whether or not there's something that we need to do to make sure that we have the equipment and we have the training to be able to service these vehicles. So another question came in that I thought was a very interesting question. This was about, what vehicles does DPW service versus like what the other departments do, and can we do more to kind of think of this more as like a shared service? Can this be more, can more work be utilized, or can more work either be done, or can we use more of the equipment at that brand new facility that they have? And interestingly enough, when we asked the DPW director this question, he had just had the conversation with the town manager about, when, let's say, fire or police who currently do some of their own vehicles, like, can we use this brand new facility that we have to use more of those vehicles? And I think that they're currently exploring this option. I think the way that he framed it, it's really more of, trying to find a way of sharing space. If you haven't been over and seen the new facility, I highly recommend checking it out, and especially looking where they service the vehicles. It's a great facility. There's a lot of bays and there's some lifts. It takes extra coordination, I think, to make sure that, if somebody from police or fire needs to get a vehicle in for repairs, that it's not interfering with other planned work from the DPW. But it's something that they're currently working on, and I think that given the brand new facility, that it seems like they want to try to make something that's going to work so that all parties can utilize the space while not interfering with the DPW repairs that need to be made. So it was a great question, and I was glad to hear that DPW and the town manager's office are kind of working on what we can do to better utilize such a great resource to us. And just lastly, I think I wanted to I think the question comes up every year that we have, is what's like the value of having this in-house versus starting to outsource some of more of these repairs. And I think, especially this year, I think the DPW director was made it very clear to us that it's a great asset to be able to have, a fully equipped mechanics garage that's able to service your vehicles in a timely manner. And it's especially crucial when you're in, especially like snow emergencies, because you can have, if something gets broken or if something needs to have repairs, you have your mechanics right there on site, and you can get a piece of equipment if something breaks back on the road pretty quickly. I think just the preventative maintenance and the level of service that the mechanics perform, I didn't realize that they had the technical ability to do more than just kind of the basic preventative maintenance. They actually can do, transmissions, engines, et cetera, the expensive things that can can take a private dealership a long time to get around to. And I think having them responsive to our fleet and on our own schedule is a great benefit for us to have. And then just the water and sewer, just to mention the water and sewer offsets, $204,265. And again, that's from water and sewer.
Do you have a motion?
So I would make a motion to approve the highway motor equipment repair taxation total for $499,804.
Second. Questions, comments, Chuck and Alan?
Okay, sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that, that was great. 2 comments and a question. First, the sharing, that's great. It's great to hear that they're thinking about sharing vehicle maintenance tasks across the town. Hopefully it leads to reduced costs and reduced headcount, which would be the goal. We may not need as many vacancies in that space if we could do that. So it's very, very good to hear. Second, on the outsourcing, it's not a matter of taking the whole thing and shipping it out. It's looking at what some of the more rote things might be able to do and finding, an external party that might be able to do them for us, again, with the goal of managing our headcount, which is where most of our cost is. My question is this: on the fleet management deployment, sounds like a good idea. Has Mike estimated any cost savings that would generate, either in terms of preventative maintenance or better deployment?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like it goes back to, when we track our assets and facilities. I think the general idea is to try to be able to better track these things, and especially like the warranty information, right, for when you purchase new vehicles. I think that part of getting the fleet management system in, or trying to get that in, is being able to be more proactive in your repairs and trying to stay on top of things. Hard to put an exact number on. I think it's more of an efficiency and a measure than anything. Hard to put a dollar figure on it, but I think if you start seeing that, you're being more reactive in making a repair before something breaks, hopefully the thought is that you would save money and time.
Right, I agree with what you're saying. I would encourage, anytime we're gonna make a technology investment, that we start moving to the mindset of what is this going to save us? Because this will save us money, we should calculate that is, so we know what kind of return we're gonna get. And my last question is, who's deploying the software if he gets it? Is it IT or is it DPW?
So I think it would be, I heard it as more of like a DPW initiative.
Yeah.
I don't think it's super high, it's not like a super high tech, it's basically, it's like in, so the way that I would describe, my dad's a mechanic, I'm trying to frame this in a way for somebody that's not a mechanic, right? So you go and get your car repaired, they come in and they say, this is what's wrong with it, and they say that, we need to redo the transmission, et cetera, right? So it's having, rather than it's not presently a high-tech operation, so trying to get that getting a system that's electronic, having this professionally done, tracking the amount of time, the amount of what the parts that are going in, the money that you're spending, and ultimately being able to better track the repairs over the life of a vehicle, and is a best practice.
I understand the functionality, and the functionality is definitely in the DPW wheelhouse, but the software itself, in my view, should be controlled by IT and deployed by IT, just so we can, even from a cyber perspective. So I'll just stop there.
No, that's a great point, and I think, we didn't have that conversation specifically, but I would.
We don't have a recommended system yet, they have an idea, but they haven't chosen something yet. But that's a good, I just wanna add, it is the cost benefit analysis that has prevented them from doing it so far, because there's this big, they don't wanna put something in that's only half used, or doesn't, right, or that doesn't have buy-in, right? So they've been thinking very carefully about cost benefit analysis and whether it's worth the cost. They finally think that they might have some possibilities that would be cost effective in terms of saving us money versus.
We could see that, yeah.
Yeah, that's been the sticking point. They've been doing that sort of thinking and deciding, it wasn't really worth it until now.
Thank you.
Alan Jones.
Thank you. In terms of capacity of both staff and the facility itself, do you think they're under capacity, have excess capacity, overworked, or in terms of sharing? In other words, if they took on more responsibilities around the town, would that mean additional staff and equipment, or do you think they have excess capacity?
There's staff in the police department that also do motor repair, so you'd be combining the staff.
Yeah,
They're severely understaffed right now.
Yeah.
They're severely understaffed. Yeah, because they've lost some people.
And to Annie's point,
Sorry, I mean, if the vacancies were filled,
Oh,
for a budget.
yeah, and to Annie's point, like currently there's people, there's individuals in police and fire that are, they receive a stipend as part of their positions to be the mechanic that does those positions. Traditionally, most municipalities operate that way, and DPWs usually don't manage don't actually work on the equipment of police and fire, because that's what you have your mechanic and police and fire for. But I think it would be more of police and fire if you needed to use the DPW facility, those mechanics from fire and police would be able to use that facility if need be. And potentially rely on the mechanics in DPW if needed.
Okay, so it sounds sort of like the way the facilities department came together, differently, janitors all over the place, and they came together as facilities. Sort of really moving things around.
I would naturally see if somebody from police or fire needed assistance from somebody from DPW, I'm sure they would help one another out. But I think the primary use would be, I think the primary intention would be for police or fire to use the facility for their own service. And I think there would probably, I'm not familiar with what the collective bargaining agreement would say, but I would think that if somebody in the mechanic who represents the mechanics, if they started working on equipment outside of their job description, I'm sure that there would be collective bargaining implications as well.
But I'm sort of thinking if sharing increased, it wouldn't really be a budget issue, it would be more a management issue.
Correct, managing the space.
Any further questions on motor equipment? All right, there's a motion, it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Thank you. My records indicate that the budgets we have left to do are solid waste.
Yep.
Insurance. And water and sewer, is that it?
Education.
And education, not schools, on the 24th. water and sewer and insurance. Can you do this?
Might be able to do insurance Wednesday, otherwise it'll be Monday.
We have a very tight deadline on Monday. As it is, I'm worried we're gonna go to midnight on Monday. So try to do it on Wednesday.
And water and sewer, they will not have a contract by then.
You mean
But,
solid waste.
sorry, solid waste, they will not have a contract by then. But we can probably vote the number, and we just don't have more information for you. And that's what we'll have to do.
We'll do that on Wednesday.
Yeah, okay.
For the time we have left, let's deal with water bodies. What do people want to do with water bodies? You're asking for $85,000.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, moved and seconded. Questions, comments, Annie?
Just that $85,000, the town manager is aware of it, he's comfortable with it, if it's in his plan.
It's in the budget book.
Great.
Sophie?
I have notes from last year that the 85,000 was also level funded then, and that it was from the override stabilization fund, does that make sense, or remember, is that, I don't know what I was writing down, okay. Don't know what that's about.
Any other discussion on water bodies? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. All right,
We have other things to vote, though, right, as well as budgets?
we do, we have warrant articles, so
Warrant
let's
articles, right.
start going through those with the time we have left. The first one we discussed, well, the first one is Article 15, the senior citizen property tax exemption. We're still waiting to hear what the assessor's gonna do. I expect that we'll have to report at town meeting on that one. The HERO Act, Article 20. What do people feel about, how do people feel about that?
Something here will withdraw most, but Ed Kohler.
Does anyone else remember anything about the HERO Act?
Is the select board going to put forth the motion?
Just gonna say, is there a dollar amount attached?
We have 2516 per year, 110 vets,
That's what I have to.
not too many.
Yeah, I hear, my notes are $2,516 in cost. Is that consistent with what you have, Al?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
This could be not a big political thing, but hard to resist. The amount of money is fairly trivial. I'd say, let the selectmen handle it. We should get involved.
Except it's appropriation, don't we have to say something?
It's not an appropriation on it.
We're accepting the provisions.
So it would be us endorsing or not endorsing? Or just not taking a position?
Yeah, just
Alright.
don't take a position, but
So you've made a motion not to take a position?
Yeah.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussions?
What is the motion?
That we aren't gonna take a position and let the selectmen handle it?
position.
Yeah.
No.
let the select board decide.
All right, all in favor of just not taking a position on Article 20 and leaving it to the select board, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm gonna have to abstain.
Okay, All in favor of letting the selectmen, of not taking a position, not in no action, but we're not waiting in. We're not waiting in at all.
Is it
Raise
wouldn't be in
your,
the report?
it won't be in the report. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Any opposed? And abstentions? 1 abstention. We will ask the school department about Article 21. Article 24, establishing a revolving fund. Is that something that the select board does? In other words, is this something that we should wait in on?
Yeah, they handle all the revolving funds.
Alright, well, I won't take this for a vote, we'll just, unless anyone objects, we're not going to. Charlie?
I have a question about that, because it says under Article 24 that to establish a new revolving fund and appropriate sums of money to fund the same revolving fund. So there is an appropriation here. So, as much as I agree with the idea that selectmen, this is not something that's coming from fees from citizens or something like this. This is an appropriation from town meeting. And it'll show up in the budget. Or it could if they write the article.
My understanding is coming from grants.
Well, it says to appropriate sums of money.
I would assume they handle it just like all the revolving funds that they normally do in the selectmen's report, which, basically sets a high and a low, and you could utilize X dollars within the money coming in. So it says appropriate, but it's not a traditional appropriation, it's a traditional revolving fund.
We have to appropriate some money to prime the pump.
I don't think so, the way it was described, we did not.
Why can't we find out from the select board what they plan to do?
Sure. But we understand what they're gonna take the money from these rents, put it in a revolving fund, and then, to pay for the permanent school.
Which is rented out, right?
Yeah. And I see this is like any other revolving fund that we don't get involved in. How do people want to handle this? Take no position?
Take no position.
All right, all in favor of taking no position, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Unanimous. PEG access, do we have the numbers for PEG yet that have worked out? Or are we still waiting?
For which one?
PEG access, Article 45. Let's hold off on PEG access. Parking benefits, we did reclass. There are no amendments to the FY25 budgets. Capital. There's no.
So do you need a vote of no action?
Yeah, let's take a vote on 48. No action on amendments to FY25 budgets.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, Article 51, rescind prior borrowing authorization. There is none. Is there a motion for no action?
No action.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move the 52.
What's the number we have there? Transportation infrastructure,
31,395.80.
what's that number out? 31,
Can you say it again?
what was the number?
What was the
The
number?
transportation?
52.
The amount, please, the amount.
Oh, 31,395.80 cents.
Thank you.
No charge.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions, unanimous. We'll wait to do 53 and 54 when Grant does water and sewer. We took a vote on Minuteman. We've done appropriations for town celebrations. Article 58. I have 15,161 as a number. I don't know where I got that number from.
Just an indemnity.
Yeah, I think I got it from the budget book.
Chair,
Topher.
I just have a, sorry to go back to Article 56, but I just noticed something. The Civilian Advisory Board is not listed along with all these others. Is that a problem? Seems to enumerate many things. I need to let that out.
Or any other town committee or commissions at the end.
Oh, I did that, okay, gotcha.
Did we ever discuss the police advisory board?
Coming in on Wednesday. All right, so to Article 58. Indemnification.
Um, 15,161. I would suggest checking with Alex on that though. Sometimes they change at the last minute.
All right, well, let's, so it's on page 193 of the budget book. Let's take a vote, but I will double check with Alex as to the number for indemnification. Is there a motion for 15,161?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
Okay, if I could, I was gonna amend it to say, or what other number the chair finds out.
All right, so, this motion, is there a motion for reconsideration of Article 58?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, all in favor of reconsideration, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, there's a new motion for Article 58.
Is 15,151 or such other number as the chairman may update.
Excuse me, do you wanna limit that? I just feel like when you're talking about indemnification, could it go up to like a million or like several million? No?
Oh, no, it's always that figure. It's not budgeting ahead, it's looking at the last numbers that actually come in. And that's why I think it could be a different number than 15,151.
Agree, trust the chair.
Okay.
Yeah, you completely misread me, John.
I'm just gonna say one thing, I've read the warrant article and I feel like it's very hard to understand what they're looking for. It's like to replenish a fund, to
They don't,
help out the police officers. And then you see 15,000, you're like, fine, but then, okay, but if you guys, like, for you guys.
and it's structured in such a way that they have to use every other source of monies, insurance, Medicare, or whatever, before they can come to the town.
Yeah, yeah, it seems like a catch-all, but, okay.
Okay, there's a motion, I believe it was seconded, any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. We just did 59, 60, we will do on Wednesday, 61 Harry Barber for 7,500.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on Harry Barber? All in favor of 7,500 for Harry Barber, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. We did 62, appropriation private ways, Article 63. Manager's looking for another 100,000 to keep the fund, keep money in the fund to be able to use repairs.
So moved.
To do repairs.
Second.
Any questions, discussion on Article 63? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Let's skip ACMi. I think we need more time to discuss that. John Morden's Article 65, we heard the manager say that he will find money in the parking benefits district.
No action.
Yeah, no action.
Move no action with a comment that the funds shall be found within the parking benefit district.
Yes, and seconded, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, or abstention, unanimous.